entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
This is Thursday, October 24th. Got the Thursday Night Football preview, the full injury update, and the rankings for week number 8. If you're looking for the rankings cheat sheet and the injury cheat sheet, you can just sub to the free Mayo Media newsletter, and they'll be sent directly to you on Wednesdays. But I've updated everything for Thursday, and the link is down in the comment section and description right now. So you hit the like while you're here as you go searching out for the full list of rankings. And if you sub to Mayo Media Network on YouTube, you get into a draw for $500. So let me give you a second to do that. All right, that easy. That could have been a $500 click. All right, Thursday Night Football. The Rams are 2.5-point dogs at the moment to the Minnesota Vikings. This has been going back between 3 and 2.5 all week. So a lot of money coming in on the Rams. I actually love the Vikings in this game, but I seem to be on some sort of an island with that. I'm sure the public would agree with me, and the very chalky side. The square side likes the Vikings, but it just seems like a huge mismatch on paper. And when you take a look at the injury report, yes, the Rams are getting healthier because Cooper Kupp is going to play in this game. He's been removed from the injury report. Jordan Whittington and his shoulder injury is out for this game. Puka has been designated to return from the injured reserve. He is practicing in a limited capacity, but I do not expect him to play on Thursday night, especially with 10 days off now for the Rams to give him that extra time to get back closer to 100%. If Puka plays, probably not going to play him anyway. Kupp, though, is wide receiver number 6 in the rankings this week. Tutu Atwell, with that injury to Whittington, and assuming there is no Puka, is wide receiver number 33. Kyren comes in just inside the top 10 at number 10 against a number 1 rated Vikings rush defense. It's going to be hard to move the ball on the Rams this week. You'll probably see more through the air from Kyren than on the ground from Kyren. On the other side of the ball, Aaron Jones is going to play. Not sure about TJ Hawkinson as of right now. I do have Hawkinson in the rankings. He is tight end number 13. There are no bye weeks in week number 8, so you don't really have to go scrounging to find replacements. You can wait and see what's going on with Hawkinson, whether or not he's going to play. Unless you have an absolute disaster of a tight end position, you likely have a more safe option, if nothing else. Now, maybe Hawkinson plays and he's great, who knows, but coming back after missing a year off injury, that maybe you want to give him a week to see how he's doing, at least see what his route participation is going to be. Again, you can find all of the rankings for this game and all games down in the description. Check out that entire list, okay? Thursday night also means we got a free pick on Underdog if you use code MAYO as sign up as a first time. There's also some like free play tokens, 30 to 50% boost. There's NBA free squares, but you got to use code Mayo to get in right now. So here's what you do. Use code Mayo, you get the Matt Stafford free pick. So you can just throw that on. You're going to win that one. It's a free pick. And then what you put with it is Sam Darnold lower than 14.5 rushing yards. Darnold's been actually quite good at scrambling, although guys just don't really scramble against the Rams. They don't generate enough pressure, so there's a lot of clean pockets allowing Darnold time to step up. He generally only runs when he has to, when he's under duress. The Rams just don't seemingly do that. So you have to hope his 2 rushes in this game, he doesn't break one off. So lower than 14.5 rushing yards for Sam Darnold. Additionally, I'm going with Cooper Kupp. He's back. He's off the injury report. I think he's healthy. I'm going higher than 13.1 fantasy points in this game because when in doubt, Matt Stafford has a play he loves to run. It's throw it to Cooper Kupp, who's standing 8 yards away from him. So if he piles up his 7-8 catches, gets his 100 yards, 80 yards, hell, if he scores a touchdown, we're there already. So Cooper Kupp, higher fantasy points, Sam Darnold, lower rushing yards, and add on that Matt Stafford free pick, and boom, you get 6 times your money on that Underdog entry when you use code Mayo. All right? Injuries to look at and the rankings that are affected by them. Andy Dalton was involved in a car crash on Tuesday with his family. Everyone's okay, except he sprained his thumb. He is no longer playing against the Broncos this week. That means Bryce Young is starting. He is ranked last among all quarterbacks for the week, but it's severely affected my ranking of Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard. You got to bump them way down. We saw this play out the first 2 weeks of the season, and it was horrible for their fantasy prospects. Plus, Deontay Johnson's dealing with 8 injuries to begin with, so he drops outside of the top 20, outside of the top 30, and outside of the top 40. He is now wide receiver number 41 for the week against the Broncos. And frankly, even that may be too high. I've ran the new projections. The lower on him on Underdog this week of 54.5 is a great 80% winner per the simulations right now. So wide receiver, number 41 for Deontay Johnson. Chuba moves from running back number 13 all the way down to running back number 28 this week. Maybe he can get it going by himself on the ground against the Broncos, although we've seen more Miles Sanders get worked in when Bryce Young has been playing. Maybe that was just a first 2-week script. We don't know. So maybe you end up seeing like a 30% Miles Sanders, and Jonathan Brooks is practicing at the moment. Do not expect him to play this week against Denver, but week 9, week 10 is probably when you see the super rook on the field splitting carries with Chuba Hubbard. So the Chuba Hubbard, great. The renaissance of Chuba Hubbard and helping your fantasy team through 7 weeks is probably over at this point. You probably need to sit him down unless you're devoid of any other good options. But again, with no bye weeks, you should have some decent options on the table. Jameis Winston has been named the starter for the Cleveland Browns because, obviously, Deshaun Watson is out for the season with that Achilles tear, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson is A, not good, and B, hurt his finger. So we're getting Jameis. I don't know if it's going to be 30-30 Jameis, where he's just chucking the ball down the field, but has to be an upgrade over Deshaun Watson, who was performing as the worst quarterback in football. So obviously Noah Murray Cooper, Nick Chubb is back in the backfield and starting to ramp back up. I was very encouraged by how much he actually played and the carries that he handled a week ago, and even a little bit of work in the passing game. Jameis, not a big dump-off type of quarterback, likes to push the ball down the field. So Jerry Jeudy I have ranked over Cedric Tillman right now. Jerry Jeudy comes in at number 34 in the wide receiver rankings. Tillman at number 40. That's one spot ahead of Deontay Johnson. Yes, I would play Cedric Tillman over Deontay Johnson this week. Quarterbacks withstanding here of who is actually getting them the ball. David Njoku is tight end number 3. I like this passing game this week. Don't expect them to beat the Ravens, but to look a bit more competent. And Teller is back on the offensive line as well. So things are just turning out well for Jameis that maybe he can get a little bit of protection this week. The 49ers injury situation is probably the most difficult to figure out and the impact that it may have. They're still 4-point favorites against Dallas on Sunday Night Football. So you're dealing with a confluence of circumstances here. Is A, unless we know Saturday evening or Sunday morning, which is not necessarily likely, you have to wait all day to make a lot of decisions on these Niner guys. And here's what we're dealing with. Debo got released from hospital with pneumonia. He's now questionable to play. There is a chance that he plays. He's probably still not going to play as he has pneumonia. That becomes a difficult situation. You'd think, hey, let's just insert Juwan Jennings in and make him a top 20 option. Well, Juwan Jennings missed last week with a hip injury. He has not practiced as of yet. He's going to end up being a game time decision. If he plays, I would play him. Issue is, we don't know whether or not he's going to play. So I have him at wide receiver number 24 at the moment, but the more information that we get throughout the course of the week, I might have to bump him up or down based on that. Because if you have to wait and then you're left with Ronnie Bell or Ricky Purcell or Chris Conley or Cowan or whoever it might be, those aren't great options, A. And B, we'd have no idea where the ball is going to go to any of those guys. Who is going to be the lead? Whose role that they take on? So it's just mainly an avoid situation with the Niners outside of Jennings. If Debo plays, you probably play him because we would have that information early. Be like, oh yeah, Debo's actually fine, but it's a long recovery from pneumonia. Not like weeks long, but to miss another game is probably on the table for Debo at the moment. Oh yeah, also, George Kittle might not play with a foot injury. I'm assuming he's going to go with this mid-foot sprain. He'll just power through it, but he might be limited in terms of overall performance. Obviously, if George Kittle is playing, you are playing him at tight end. There's not really many options better than George Kittle. I have him ranked as the number 2 tight end of the week, but just keep an eye on him as well. Maybe have a backup plan in place should anything happen to George Kittle if you're waiting on him. CMC is unlikely to practice this week. Week 10 still looks more likely. And the bigger issue with all this, so Sunday night, all these injuries, not knowing where the ball is going to go, and San Francisco has its bye week next week in week 9. So you have a chance to, listen, maybe scrounge out a win against the Cowboys. If they weren't 3-4, none of these guys would be even on the table to play. They'd punt the game off, take the L, move on, and get everyone healthy for week 10. They might not be afforded that luxury this week. So you might see guys come back and try to play through it and then have the bye week to recover. Or you can say things like Debo, hey, listen, you're not going to be at 100%. You're not going to help us that much anyway because you can barely breathe and you have fluid in your lungs. Maybe just take 2 weeks off and get yourself healthy for when everyone comes back and we can make a run later in the season. So there's a lot going on this week with the Niners outside of just the injuries and the depth chart, the external factors of record and a bye week a week from now to give these guys extra time to recover. Jordan Mason looks fine, though. He's limited at practice, but he's going to play. He's probably the one that you want to play because you can shred shred Dallas's defense on the ground. He is ranked at number 5 in the running back rankings this week. If you're looking for the rankings, again, they're down in the description right now. For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. The Titans traded DeAndre Hopkins to Kansas City. It looks like Hopkins is going to play this week. In what capacity? I have no idea. Worthy is a better play than Hopkins this week, although they might try to get Hopkins a touchdown if they get near the goal line. I'd take it a lot like Amari Cooper with the Bills last week, where he was not a full participant in routes, but they did actively have a few plays to try to get him going. I think long-term, Hopkins could be all right, like a top 30 receiver for the season. I wouldn't expect him to be like, oh yeah, Hopkins is great. He's now Rashee Rice and getting 12 targets a game and just dominating out there. Maybe he still has tons left in the tank, but even if he doesn't, he's going to be like, okay. And he's a very good red zone presence as well. And they're just piling up a bunch of those guys. But in this week only, I mean, he's not Deontay Johnson category where if you have to, sure, I'd go out of my way not to play him. He is outside the top 40 at wide receiver. Calvin Ridley is not practicing for the Titans with Mason Rudolph starting either. So Lord knows what's going on with him. He is outside the top 50 at receiver because A, he's hurt, and B, hasn't been very good. See, Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball. Not great because he tends to throw at Tyler Boyd, who led the team in targets and catches with Rudolph starting a week ago. He's still not a good play against Detroit, but a lot of garbage time potential here as 11-point underdogs to the Lions. So I have him at wide receiver number 51 for the week. If you need someone to go pick up, you best be assured Tyler Boyd is probably available. Fortunately, no bye weeks that you probably don't need that either. I don't mind Chig in this spot either, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine will be the one taking over for the DeAndre Hopkins role. But again, unless you play in a 16-team league or a Nick Westbrook-Ikhine only league, that's probably when you should be considering him. Or as an underdog higher play. If it comes in, his line isn't out as of yet, but if it's 13.5 receiving yards, yeah, I could see him getting 15 receiving yards. Hell, maybe he has one catch for 20 yards. That would be good enough. That would be the sort of circumstance to target these back-end Titans receivers. Probably not with your fantasy lineups for the week. Additionally, Tajay Spears is back practicing in a limited capacity. I currently have Tony Pollard as the lead back without Spears in the rankings as number 14 in the running back rankings. However, if Spears ends up going, especially in a catch-up spot where he is the primary receiving back in the Titans backfield, Pollard's going to drop outside the top 20 and Spears will be just inside the top 35. So it kind of handicaps and kneecaps both of their value in this game, where Pollard really loses that potential high-end upside that he has by playing 80% of the snaps and working both on the ground, through the air, and getting whatever few goal line carries might arise with the Titans against the Lions. So just be cognizant of that if you're relying on Tony Pollard this week for your fantasy lineups. Next up, we have Jonathan Taylor, who's back and practicing in a limited capacity. I would expect him to play this week. I have him at number 8 in the running back rankings because if he's playing, I want to play Jonathan Taylor. He's been great almost every week where he's been on the field. We already saw him go off once against the Houston Texans, so why not make it twice for the course of the season? Now, if he doesn't go, I'd have Goodson over Sermon, but frankly, you do not want to play either of those guys in your fantasy lineup this week. Chris Olave is progressing through concussion protocol, protocol. Expect him to go with Spencer Rattler once again, playing at quarterback this week against the Los Angeles Chargers, who might have a few corners back and defense might be getting a little bit healthier. Olave, I currently have inside the top 20 at wide receiver number 18 for the week. Number 22. Olave is in the wide receiver rankings with Spencer Rattler. Bub Means I have at number 59, Tipton down at number 71. It's still not a great matchup, especially with how the Chargers want to play this game by running, limiting the amount of possessions, extending drives, and really not doing. Basically, I see this game playing out very much like the Denver and New Orleans game from last Thursday night, only because it's basically the same New Orleans team, down offensive linemen, down defensive players, just adding back in Chris Olave and maybe Taysom Hill. We'll see if Taysom Hill is able to go. He's not like in for sure as of yet, but he's trending that way. And I have him at tight end number 13 for the week because he still might be banged up with this ribs problem. Issue is they still can't block, and the Chargers are very much like the Broncos. So I would expect in the way that they play, the way that their teams are constructed, and what they want to do offensively. So I just kind of seeing it playing out much the same way. And this time it's not even in New Orleans, it's in Los Angeles. So the 7.5. Listen, I like the 7.5 for the Chargers just because I don't think that the Saints can put up enough points to keep up if they cannot stop anyone on the ground. Currently, New Orleans 30th in DVOA against the run, which is not a great matchup for a Chargers team who wants to absolutely run the ball down your throats. J.K. Dobbins, top 10 play at running back this week. Hopefully it actually works out this time. More quick news. Brandon Aubrey has been selected for jury duty in the Sunday Night Football game against the 49ers. Now, he is Dallas's best fantasy player. In fact, he's like a top 20 fantasy player when you start taking quarterbacks out of the equation. So, no idea what's going on with this. Right now, they're not expecting him to play. So, if you have playing a league with kickers, or you're relying on Aubrey, or you're betting the Cowboys, this is real. Like, he's worth points against the spread because he makes everything the moment they get over half. So, yeah, just be cognizant of that and see who they end up replacing him with, or if you are relying on Aubrey. Obviously, you do not drop him. You just bench him for the week. But I gotta get some Dallas court reports to see how this case is progressing and whether or not he's going to end up missing the game on Sunday. DK Metcalf did not practice on Wednesday. He is not expected to play this week. I have Tyler Lockett at wide receiver number 21, JSN at wide receiver number 24 for the week. Bobo in deeper leagues, sure, maybe, but not so much for me. Noah Fant is just outside the top 10 at tight end, though. He is a viable stream and or play this week against the Buffalo Bills. Dallas Goedert did not practice. He is probably not going to play again with this hamstring injury in a good matchup against Cincinnati. Calcaterra will draw the start again, but as we've seen with him, he only actually produces numbers when he gets into games. Although DraftKings-wise, he is in a nice rebound spot this week. He is still very cheap. He busted as a very popular cheap play last week, so now no one wants to go back to him. He's worth taking a chance on in that format. But again, Hunter Henry is still widely available to pick up off waiver wires. You can pick him up instead, even against the Jets, instead of Calcaterra, and then you might actually have a viable tight end the rest of the season because he's been great with Drake May and someone who's probably unlikely to score 0 points for you in your lineup, which is always a positive, I hear, at least in fantasy. Tua, back at limited practice. He is expected to be cleared from concussion protocol and play on Sunday. Fire them up. If he's coming back, fire up all your Dolphins. Tyreek already said get him back in the lineup. I'm going to agree. Tyreek is number 2 in the wide receiver rankings this week. Jaylen Waddle is back at number 18 in the wide receiver rankings this week. Unfortunately, your team's probably 1-6 at this point if you have those guys, but hey, at least Tua's back. Maybe you can make a run with your elite wide receiver options. Once again, there's no reason to ever even consider putting these guys on the bench. And then when it comes to underdog and even prop plays, just fire up some ladders on Tyreek Hill this week as he is going to go off against a really terrible Cardinals secondary, by the way. Okay, so we don't know what's going on with Jameson Williams as of yet. He could be having a drug suspension for 2 games. Dan Campbell said that he's still working through it. Nothing has been actually made official yet. We assume Tim Patrick would be the one stepping in for Jameson Williams because that's what we have seen in the recent past. But then Dan Campbell comes out and says that Allen Robinson is going to take on a heavy workload if Jameson Williams is officially suspended for Week 8. I don't know about that. That seems crazy. Allen Robinson hasn't been good in 6 years. And Tim Patrick, maybe it's because I like Tim Patrick and I want him to be good, and I've seen him on the field make some decent catches and have a little bit of rapport with Jared Goff, where I've seen none of that from Allen Robinson. Kind of seems like coach speak, but it's not that I moved Allen Robinson up, as I initially had Tim Patrick as a decent pickup in Williams' absence, and I had him ranked inside the top 45 at receiver in a good matchup against the Titans. I just moved Patrick down to outside the top 50 because, this worries me a little bit for a fringe player as it was anyway. I was trying to make a stand as a good stream this week with Tim Patrick. This kind of throws cold water onto that entire situation. Mike Evans is out until at least week 11 with this hamstring injury he sustained on Monday Night Football. Chris Godwin has been officially placed on injured reserve. He's going to miss the rest of the season. So, for the wide receiving core for the Buccaneers against Atlanta, and a really good matchup. Trey Palmer I have as the best option at number 38 because he was the 1v1 who replaced Mike Evans on Monday Night Football. Maybe they change up the entire system now that they know that they're missing these guys, and it's not a spur-of-the-moment in-game decision. But I'm going to roll with Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan at number 48 in the rankings, and Sterling Shepard at number 52. It's like a three-way coin flip. Roll a three-sided dice on this one. Three-sided die on this one to figure out who it is. But it is an exposable matchup against Atlanta. Atlanta generates almost no pressure. Baker's going to have time to throw the ball down the field. Who he throws to? This I do not know. Loves checking down to running backs. You might see the three-headed rotation of Tucker, Rashad White, and Bucky Irving once again. I like Bucky Irving the best of those three, but White and Bucky Irving both inside the top 28 at running back this week, as I expect both to do work through the air and Bucky Irving to get those oh-so-valuable goal line touches. Cade Otton is number 7 in the tight end rankings, and if you want to take a shot on the Bucs receivers, I get it. Palmer would be the one this week that I would take it out of. But here's what you need to be looking at, and maybe a speculative pickup for Jalen McMillan would be if he ends up playing the slot, not the outside, and they bump Sterling Shepard to the outside. We know Godwin plays the slot. We know it's a valuable role in this offense, and we know that he's out for the season. So if we see McMillan run the majority of his snaps out of the slot, that is a role that he'll probably have for the remainder of the year, which would then become very valuable, even if it doesn't work out all that well this week. You want to see him at that part of the field in order to figure everything out. So that's where we're at right now with the Bucs receiving core. It's not great, but Trey Palmer would be the Hail Mary attempt I would take if I needed it. But again, as I keep harping on, there's no bye weeks. You don't have to get crazy in your lineups this week. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. For all of the injury updates, you can check out the newsletter. If you want all the rankings, you can check out the newsletter. That link gets updated every single time there are injuries down in the description right now. If you want to join the list to get it sent directly to you, then that comes out on Wednesdays. But hey, it's completely free and it takes up one spot in your Gmail inbox or your Hotmail inbox or MSN inbox or whatever the hell it is that you use for your inbox, for your email. Now, granted, I forgot to put Bryce Hall in the rankings. Somehow there was a typo. He's inside. I believe he's running back number 6 for the week or number 7 for the week. I have him in, but for whatever reason, I had Derrick Henry in twice, replacing Bryce Hall in the spot that he was supposed to be in. Don't worry about that. Everything has been rectified at the moment. Thank all 700 of you for emailing me about that. But hey, I actually do appreciate that because I wouldn't want that to have come out and not have it get updated properly if you were looking for your player in your fantasy lineups. All right, so all the rankings down in the description. I think this is how I'm going to do the ranking show moving forward, because doing it before the Wednesday injury reports just leads to too much rambling, too much speculation. Now we have a better sense of how a lot of these injuries are going to play out. All right, code Mayo at Underdog to get that Stafford free pick. If you don't do it on Thursday, there is a Dak Prescott free pick for Sunday Night Football if you use code Mayo. Okay, thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!